All right, hi guys. I am Teresa Bates. I am at my third or fourth semester at Ball State. I'm currently at a ABA job in a clinic, so I don't do any in-home. We're all in clinic, and I primarily work with like early childhood.
Hi, I am Lane Hicks. Milena is my full name. This is my second semester at Ball State, but also my second to last semester as well. I only have to do the 6 courses because I already got my master's earlier. I am currently working at an ABA clinic as well. I'm a supervisor. I have about 5 staff and 15 clients that I'm working with, all in clinic as well. So this whole COVID thing has been a little weird transferring to online. But yeah, Matt.
Hey guys, I'm Matt, and I'm in my fourth semester. I got 2 more to go after this. Um, and while I used to work in a school for students with autism, I now just do in-home therapy for a facility that provides ABA services.
Very cool. The title of our presentation is Using Goal Setting and Performance Feedback to Increase Running Distance. Okay, the abstract. Physical activity is an important part of a healthy lifestyle. According to the Mayo Clinic, adults are expected to get 30 minutes of daily exercise in order to lose or maintain weight for a healthier lifestyle. Adults often have a difficult time motivating themselves to stay on track with their activity goals. But according to Malalu and others, self-monitoring and goal setting was proven to help performance in soccer players. Various studies have been conducted to measure the effects of goal setting and performance feedback in different team sports. However, WAC and others conducted the first study on how these methods were specifically impacted running. Our group was particularly interested in replicating this study because all of us wanted to increase our running habits. This replication focused on goal setting and feedback in order to increase physical activity, specifically running. 2 of the 3 group members were able to successfully increase their running distance by the end of the 9 weeks. So the first literature review, according to Edward L. Lakowski, an MD, various aerobic activities such as running should be occurring for 75 minutes per week. This exercise is recommended to be spaced out throughout the week and is suggested that greater amounts of exercise provides greater health benefits. So recent research suggests that 66% of adults are overweight, while 33% are obese. In a study, increasing physical activity through self-monitoring, goal setting, and feedback, researchers collected data on 4 non-obese adults' daily steps using a pedometer. All of these adults were healthy with no pre-existing conditions. The dependent variable for this study was physical activity, so walking, and this behavior was targeted for each of the participants because they wanted to either lose weight or maintain the weight that they were at. The independent variables for this study were feedback, goal setting, and self-monitoring. These independent variables have been tested separately in groups. The participants did not look at their scores during baseline and were then allowed to monitor their daily progress come time for the intervention. The study was an AB-AB reversal design. All of the participants, except for one, were able to complete the study. One participant was unable to complete the reversal design due to the relocation of his job. This study was pretty similar to our replication study that our group did because of the combination of the 3 independent variables. We were implemented the goal setting, feedback, and performance and self-monitoring, and they have proven to be effective in other settings as well. The study where goal setting was proven to be successful in the effects of goal setting on rugby performance. This study was examined. One of the independent variables used in this was goal setting. the effect of goal setting on a group rugby players. This study concluded that rugby players did improve their goals when they were setting individualized goals. This was revised and extended version from previous studies that showed group performance did not increase when goal setting was not individualized. This variable's efficacy with individuals participating in a group sport was significant to our replication because it proved that one of the three independent variables, goal setting, in the replication would be successful in a similar setting. Similar to the previous study, effects of public posting, goal setting, and oral feedback on skills of female soccer players also examined the effects of goal setting and feedback on individuals in a team sport. Like previous studies on the effects of goal settings on individuals playing rugby, these independent variables were proven to be effective for improving the individual's performance behavior in soccer. This study takes one step closer to the replication study completed by our group by testing oral feedback along with goal setting. Participants in this study were evaluated on 3 separate specific soccer goals. The participants and coaches in the study filled out questionnaires at the end to account for the social validity. This study was more of an intensive feedback than our group did because the players were getting like constant feedback from their coaches, so they had like in like real time feedback, whereas like we gave feedback at the end of the week, so it wasn't as intense and we didn't get that reinforcement or punishment like as we were doing it. We got it at the end of the week saying like you could do better or good job, you're doing great. So the previous study specifically mentions the strengths of instructor set goals. However, effects of posting self-set goals on collegiate football players' skills execution during practice and games, researches test the efficacy of posting self-set goals publicly. This is similar to the replication project completed by the group because all of our goals were self-set. Ward and others expressed an interest in ensuring that there is a description of response consequences as a component of the intervention. This factor would encourage those to evaluate the performance contingencies rather than just training and hoping. The participants in their study raised their baseline from 80% to 90%. So this was pretty good. For one of the limitations of this study, they did say that because they're already playing at a college level, they were probably like didn't have much improvement to go from there because they're already doing so well. Their independent variables was posting self-set goals, and their dependent variables was individual goals. So they had like passing goals or getting open, etc. So the literature review for this project suggests that these independent variables, goal setting and feedback, are effective to the individuals attempting to increase the desired dependent variables. In this replication, our participants will be testing if these variables increase their running distance. The study was replicated from WAC and others in 2014. In this study, 5 participants used goal setting and feedback to increase their weekly running by setting short-term goals each week and long-term goals. All 5 participants were able to increase their running.
All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the purpose of our study and the participants in the setting of our study. So for our study, again, it was originally completed by WAC, Crossland, and Miltonberger in 2014. They looked at the effects of goal setting and performance feedback, as Teresa just explained, on increasing running distance. So this is the study that we replicated. There have been previous research methods completed, which is used goal setting, as we kind of talked about in the literature review. But this would be the WAC's original study was the first one where they paired goal setting and performance feedback. So the methods that we used for participants and settings, for us, we had 2 females and 1 male that participated in our subject. Myself, I'm age 31, Teresa is 24, and Matt, our third male participant, is 26. All of us are at the graduate level students here at Ball State, and we're all participating in online classes. We have never met each other, and we do not know each other and did not know each other prior to beginning this study. and we live in various parts of the Midwest, at least two of us, and then one of us is out on the East Coast. So that kind of made it difficult for us to do that in vivo coaching with each other, which is why we had to send texts and videos to each other. Participants were deemed healthy enough to participate in this study through various manners. Myself and Teresa, for example, we have both had a physical within the past year, so we were deemed healthy for running. And then Matt has always been a runner. He participated in cross country in high school, and he gets regular annual physicals as well. However, before the study, it has been a while since Matt last ran, so it was setting baseline and everything was just as hard for him as it was for the rest of us. We all ran in multiple conditions and in various locations, such as in neighborhoods, outside in parks, and then when the gym was open, we used treadmills at the gym. Some of us did. So the materials that are needed. Each participant, we all use various methods of tracking our running distance. I used a phone app titled Map My Run. Teresa used the treadmill distance tracker and her Fitbit, and Matt also used Map My Run. We all wore running shoes, as well as we needed internet connection. All three of us needed internet connection in order to enter our data and also communicate between each other and finish our research project. We use texting and Google Hangouts for communications between group members. And we also, each group member also used their own personal laptops, as well as Microsoft Office, Microsoft Excel, Google Docs for graphing and writing the report. So now let's go ahead and look at the measurement system we used. Once the group members were ready to start, we used various methods to track our running distance. Again, I used Map My Run, which is, and as did Matt. Map My Run is owned by Under Armour. And due to the Apple App Store ratings, it is rated at 4.8 stars out of 5. Thus, we deemed it as a trustworthy app. Teresa used the gym equipment and her Fitbit. And then Matt, again, he used Map My Run, which was also, is, like I said before, is a credible app for tracking distance and GPS locations. For the design, for this study, we used a single subject research design in a form of multiple baseline across participants with an embedded changing criterion design for the intervention phases. We did notice early on in our project that we made an error, which we could not go back and fix due to the time constraints of the project. But because multiple baseline, by definition, you stagger the interventions across the participants, we did not do that. So we did not stagger when we each came out of baseline. We should have had one runner begin intervention, and then as soon as we noticed an upward trend, should have had the next runner drop out of baseline and start their trend, and so on. But that, unfortunately, we noticed too late in the game to restart. So for our data collection, we all went into intervention at the same time. Again, which we noticed was an error that we made too early on in order to change. So looking at the behavior definition of running, let's see, behavior definition of running. So running is operationally defined as nonstop movement of the legs and feet at a continuous run at a speed faster than a brisk walk. We copied this straight from the WAC research design, so that anything faster than or equal to 4 miles an hour is considered running, or 6.4 kilometers per mile. Running is also defined as movement of the legs and feet, which is defined as both feet lifting off the ground at one point, then moving forward. An example of the behavior would be running from one area to another area without stopping, or running on a treadmill going faster or equal to 4 miles an hour. A non-example of running would be anything less than 4 miles an hour. So let's look at our data collection. We collected data using applications on our cell phones. As mentioned before, we used Map, My Run, Fitbits, and we also used the Adidas running app. In the beginning, Teresa was using the treadmill to track her running distance. However, with all this quarantine and COVID-19 going around, we all know that the local gyms closed. So Teresa had to switch to the Adidas running app tracker and begin running outside instead of on the treadmill. The various applications used allowed us to track the number of miles we ran each day. We began baseline by tracking the distance ran prior to any intervention. And at this point, we also weren't giving each other feedback during baseline either. Once an intervention, once there was a cleared upward trend in baseline data, the runners then went into their intervention phases. Again, we should have staggered our phases, but we didn't, so that was our error. Yeah, so therefore the data collection reflects everything that we did in the baseline. Or actually, let's just move straight on to baseline. So for baseline, during baseline phase, all three group members used their various trackers to collect their data while running. Baseline was collected in order to see where each group member was at prior to going into any intervention or prior to setting any goals. Baseline was collected for 6 days in order to notice a trend in each runner's data, and then each runner went into intervention. Participants used, again, we used various places to run, outside parks, treadmill, and so on. Once that baseline trend was established for the group, members of the group paired off to take on the roles of the researcher and the participant for our project. The first pair was myself, I was the researcher, and Matt was the participant. Pair 2 was Matt was the researcher with Teresa as the participant. And the last pair was Teresa as the researcher and myself, Lane, as the participant. Short-term goals were set up at the beginning of each week, and participants shared their data while the researcher provided feedback about the data to the participant. Long-term goals were also set up after the initial baseline data was collected. Again, feedback consisted of where the participant was doing well, if they weren't meeting their goals, just some encouragement on how they could be meeting their goals. And each member of the study, we each ran 3 days a week. And each day, again, we were trying, our goal was just to increase our running every day. It was considered a success if we increased our run at least 2 of the 3 times a week. So let's talk about our inter-observer agreements. So since we were unable to do our feedback in vivo with each other due to geographical distances, we needed to figure out a different way to do inter-observer agreement. According to Cooper, Heron, and Heward, inter-observer agreement refers to the degree to which 2 or more independent observers report the same observed values after measuring the same events. So in order to do this, we logged our distance on a spreadsheet that we shared with each other with our assigned researcher, and also sent a screenshot of our tracker to that person. The researcher was then able to compare the data sent by the participant and add it to their IOA data spreadsheet. The IOA agreement is tracked as total count. So it would be smaller count divided by larger count times 100 in order to get total count for IOA percentage. So for treatment fidelity, after reading Enhancing Treatment Fidelity and Health Behavior Change Study, Best Practices and Recommendations by Bell, the group was able to construct a strategy in order to ensure treatment fidelity. So as mentioned before, we paired up to have one of us as the researcher, one of us as the participant, and with our various tracking apps, we are able to make sure that each participant was staying on track with their running goals. And this also allowed the participant to set useful long-term and short-term goals based on the data being produced. I'm going to go ahead and move this along to Matt to talk about what results we came up with.
Sure. Hey guys. So throughout the course of the study, it resulted in 2 of the 3 participants increasing their daily running distance with goal setting and feedback on performance. If we go ahead and look at the graphs real quick, you can see that Matt's running distance increased from a baseline mean of 0.69 miles to an average of 2.14 miles per day in the last week of intervention. Matt achieved his weekly goal for every day he ran, increasing the distance by every run.
Yeah, man.
I also reached my weekly goals in regards to changing weekly criterion, which would be running at least the criterion distance or longer. Going ahead and looking at Milena's graph, you can tell that she increased from a 0.0 baseline mean to an average of 0.40 miles per day in her final phase of intervention.
Almost got that.
And Milena achieved her weekly goal for every day on which she ran by increasing or staying the same in regards to distance. Teresa's running distance stayed within 1.5 miles and 1.87 miles until the 3rd intervention phase, when it plateaued to a distance of 1 mile all the way to the end of the data collection period. The final phase showed a consistent running distance of 1 mile, which was an average of 0.60 miles less than the baseline mean, which was 1.6 miles. Teresa achieved her daily goal of increasing running distance compared to the previous run once during baseline, which would be from session 5 to session 6, and 3 times during the intervention phases from session 7 to session 8, session 9 to session 10, and then also from session 12 to session 13. And on all other runs, the distance ran either decreased or stayed the same. So in conclusion, this study, as well as the original study, the participants set short-term, weekly goals in addition to long-term goals for their running distance. This study replicated the method section of the original study, with the data outcomes being particular to this set of participants. Contrary to the original study, where all 5 participants increased their running distance with goal setting and performance feedback, this study concluded in just 2 of the 3 participants increasing their running distance. So in summary, this study looked at increasing running distance with goal setting and feedback among 3 able-bodied participants.
All right.
Some of our limitations was that the original study was for 20 weeks and we only had 9 weeks to replicate it. So that when we were talking about how we couldn't stagger our baselines, we didn't really have time to stagger our baselines. And then like everything in the world, COVID-19 got us. So that was another limitation that we faced. I had to run outside for my last few weeks, and since I was used to running on the treadmill, that really plateaued my data. So yeah, those are our limitations for the study. We have a list of our references, and that's about it. There's our presentation. I hope you guys liked it. I hope we get some comments and questions. Can't wait to answer them.
Thank you, guys.
And how do I stop the recording? Stop.